Have we corrupted the workforce to the point that they're just going to resist ever getting back into the office?
People want to work as little as possible and recreate as much as possible and earn as much as they possibly can.
If you're working remotely, you're getting the results, you're adding value to businesses. Who cares where you're getting that work done?
You say mentally it's satisfying getting paid to do your laundry. Are you gaming the system? I think there are exceptions to every rule. I have a question for you. When did requiring an employee to come to work in person and physically show up to do their job become debatable? I mean, leaving your house to put in an honest day's work dates back to ancient Rome. So what changed? Yep, you guessed it, COVID, which allegedly sent employees home to protect them. Well, the pandemic has come and gone, but the remote worker has not. In fact, nearly 30% of all work is being done remotely, with over half of all American employees wanting to work fully remote. Why do they want to trade in their office space for their comfy homes? 3 little words: work-life balance. But now the majority of employers are saying enough is enough and are mandating workers to RTO, return to office. But RTO is a big NO for many employees because 46% of remote staffers say they would quit if forced back. And a quarter of them are simply ignoring their company's in-person policies altogether. Management and government leaders say return to office is about accountability and oversight, but their remote counterparts claim it's more about control and micromanagement.
Sir, the next item, as you announced in your speech, is a requirement that federal workers return to full-time in-person work immediately.
My company said that everyone needed to return to work. I'd have to put in my notice.
If you're applying to fully remote jobs for your first role out of college, your career is about to be over before it even started.
If you're in the first 5 years of your career, you should get to a company that actually goes into the office.
I'm so much more productive when I am at home as compared to inside an office.
When you're a really bad person and God sends you to hell, you know what's waiting for you in the 7th circle of hell? A work from home job.
People who are 25 and under in their first or second job, they need to be in office full time.
Just because you drive 5 hours to work round trip every single day of the week for the last 50 years doesn't mean that I have to be as miserable as you.
Do you want to know why they're forcing people back to the office in 2025? It has very little to do with collaboration and almost nothing to do with corporate real estate, but a lot to do with controlling you.
Well, joining us now is New Jersey State Senator representing Legislative District 26, Joe Pacio. Senator Pacio has proposed a bill that will require New Jersey state employees to return to the office 5 days a week, effectively eliminating the option to work remotely. Senator, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Dr. Phil.
Well, I really appreciate it. Now, you say returning to the office is about oversight and ensuring state employees are doing what is expected of them. You feel strongly that they should be in the office.
I do. I mean, the whole idea of work for home for New Jersey was born out of necessity from COVID. That experiment has been tried and it's been shown to be a failure. My office before COVID, we'd have occasionally somebody who would call us to help them navigate through the process, whether it was an uninsurance claim or whether it was a Department of Motor Vehicle issue, Dr. Phil. But since COVID and since the workforce is no longer working at their desk, I had asked my staff, could you quantify about how many people we've helped since COVID? And they shot back and said about 4,000 people. Well, that's the problem. Those other people that's supposed to be at the end of the line, they're not there. And when you don't have somebody in the office, so you can't supervise them. And without proper supervision, then you have a problem as far as accountability, exactly what they're doing and how they should be doing it.
Well, what do you say to those people who say, look, if you don't trust us, you should have never hired us?
Well, that's not an issue. First of all, if you're not to be trusted, you're not going to get hired no matter what job you're applying for. And neither should you be hired. But there are certain parameters that we have to set up, certain work that has to be done. And we have to make sure, especially me dealing with taxpayer money, I have a fiduciary responsibility that that work is done and it's done promptly and it's done to the best efforts that they can give to the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey.
The whole idea, as I understood it, is this work from home was implemented to protect people. I think it was a bad idea. I don't think it was necessary. I think it has proven that it was not the great life-saving sort of idea that it was promoted to be at the time. And I think it ruined a lot of people's lives and businesses and created all kinds of problems. But the idea was to protect people. It wasn't to change the work model in a meritocracy that built America, but it seems like people got used to it, and now they don't want to go back to getting up, taking a shower, getting dressed, getting in their cars, getting to work, collaborating with their team members, and getting things done. Have we corrupted the workforce to the point that they're just going to resist ever getting back into the flow, getting back into the office?
I think a part of the problem, and it's not a problem, it's human nature. And you would be better able to answer something like this. It's human nature that people want to work as little as possible and recreate as much as possible and earn as much as they possibly can. It's not a coincidence that if you take a look at the work from home statistics, that the vast majority of days that people are not going into the office is what? It's Friday. So it just goes to the point that, again, people just want to get their weekend started early. And some people, given the choice, they would want their weekend starting on Monday and ending on Sunday.
Has this hurt the productivity that you can see and feel? Do you notice it in terms of what gets done in your offices?
So before we went on the air, I asked my staff, I said, do me a favor, get me somebody on the phone from the Department of Labor. I want to see if we can get somebody to help us with an imaginary unemployment claim. Of course, nobody was at the other end of the phone. You got directed to a website, and then you had to fill in the website and then wait and give me an email and somebody would get back to you. All the people that are there, they're still getting paid. And quite frankly, if they're going to do something like this, AI can take over in a nanosecond doing something like that for a fraction of the cost of what New Jersey taxpayers are paying for. And it's not only the state that has problems with working from home. If you took a look at the tech industry, for instance, if there was ever a poster child for working from home, it should be the tech industry. You have people that can input. You have people that that write code, and people that are in the places where you call centers. So that would seem like an area where would be conducive from working from home. But all the major tech companies, from Amazon, from Meta, from Google, they're all going the opposite direction. They're all calling their workers back in. Mark Zuckerberg said that remote workers are less productive than workers that are not working remotely, people that come into the office. And Google says it's more of a positive experience when people come into the office and they collaborate and they work together as a team.
I think you have to look at it. There are exceptions to every rule. We always say that there are exceptions that prove the rule. I know I've got staff where they don't need to be here. Frankly, they would like to be here, some of them, but they don't need to be here, and they do just as well working remotely. Some of them travel a lot. Some of them might be in Florida. Some of them might be in New York. We've got a Washington correspondent that's in D.C. at the White House, and she doesn't get here to the network all that often. But there are circumstances where they just really don't need to be here. They need to be where they are. And I get that. There are exceptions that prove the rule. But by and large, a company is a team. And when you have a team, the team members need to be there and collaborate, stimulate each other, and work together. And the actual statistics bore out that after a period of time, the new kind of wore off of this. And it started to have a backlash. And we're going to talk about that as we move forward. So I'm anxious to hear your thoughts when you hear from these other people. We're going to add a 10-year remote employee who says mandating workers to return to the office is not about productivity, it's just about control and forcing staff to make work their number one priority. We're going to add him to the conversation when we come back. Your body is a system, and when it's running right, you feel focused, energized, in flow, but sometimes we struggle to find that flow state. Why? Because there's too much static in our system, brain fog, fatigue, and inflammation. The Echo Flask clears the static by infusing your water with molecular hydrogen, a natural science-backed gas that helps your body think sharper, recover faster, and run smoother. This is more than hydration. It's better focus, more energy, faster recovery, less internal stress, and longer-term benefits that keep you sharp. When your water works harder, your whole system does too. Find your flow state with the Echo Flask hydrogen water bottle and get an unlimited supply of hydrogen water at home and on the go. Visit echowater.com/Phil and use code Phil for 10% off. That's echowater.com/Phil. Enter code Phil to save 10%. Let's discuss preparedness because we know emergencies happen when we least expect them, but instead of just taking it, we can prepare. Let's discuss Jace Case, one of your most important preparation tools. With Jace Case, you'll have emergency prescription medications on hand right when you need them. Think about it. Ever been caught off guard? Whether it's a sudden illness or a travel hiccup, the right medications can make all the difference. Jace Case is designed to take that worry off your plate, so when a minor health issue pops up, it doesn't turn into a major problem. Don't let unforeseen circumstances derail your plans or your peace of mind. Live with confidence. Take charge with Jace today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL for a discount on your order and get emergency antibiotics on hand for the moment you need them. That's JASE.com, code PHIL, PHIL.
During the pandemic, when everybody was able to work from home, this meant for the first time, people could actually prioritize their life and have a work-life balance. But CEOs and leaders do not like this. They don't want to be the third thing down on the list of your priorities. They want to be number one. They want to come before your kids, your hobbies, your health. And they realized the easiest way to get back to being number one was to force people back to the office.
Well, that was Joel, a 10-year remote worker who insists that CEOs who push return to the office policies are only doing so to make sure employees have their priorities straight. Work comes first, then family, health, and hobbies. So, Joel, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, great to be here, Dr. Phil. Really passionate about this conversation, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are. And you say that forcing a return to the office is about power and control, right?
100%. I think when remote work became popular during the pandemic, one of the big shifts that happened was just our relationship to work. So people realized they could still get results. They could still serve the businesses that they worked for, but they could also do things like spend time with family, focus on health, focus on other things that are equally as important in life, and ultimately fulfill people, which actually makes them better employees.
So you think you're more productive, the same, or less productive?
From even just a pure time perspective, taking away a commute, taking away some of the small talk that you have in the office, taking away distractions, 100%, I think remote workers are way more productive. I also think a lot of remote workers overcompensate and they become more accessible because work is always around. It never really leaves your side.
Well, how about you personally?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm able to do work early in the morning. So, before my kids wake up, I got 3 kids under 5. Before they wake up, I'm able to get ahead on work emails. And then I'm able to work through lunch if I need to. And then once the day's out and my kids are in bed, I typically will do some work after hours as well.
You were listening to my conversation with Senator Pacio, and he believes that if it's such a great deal it's a great deal for the employee, but not for the employer, that the work-life balance is overbalanced towards the employee and not the employer. What do you say to that?
Look, I think there's lazy people everywhere. There's certainly lazy people in the office. There's lazy people working remotely. I think in my experience, what I found is there's a lot less distractions at home. There's a lot more accessibility to work. And I think that anyone who does work remotely, they kind of understand these misconceptions that leaders have, and that even forces them to work and be more productive. Also think that a lot of the big companies that are forcing people back to the office, I know some of the big tech companies were mentioned. This also coincides with a really tough job market, particularly for corporate jobs. So we're seeing a lot of companies forcing people back to the office, almost as a round of layoffs as well. And they're not admitting to this, but it's just clear it's going on, and it coincides with the difficult job market that I work in quite a bit as a recruiter.
And what type of work do you do? You don't need to name the company or anything, just what type of work do you do?
So I'm a recruiter. I work with mainly construction companies, which ironically, most of those positions are on site. It's hard to build a building away from the job site. But I've been in the recruitment industry for a decade. And within that as well, I work with a lot of HR leaders, also run a podcast within the recruitment space. I have a lot of these conversations with leaders that are doing workforce planning for larger companies, smaller companies, everything in between.
And, there's actually been a fair amount of research about this. And I'm talking about methodologically sound studies with substantial sample size. Stanford University has done an impressive study about it. There's an Asian IT firm that has done a study involving 10,000 workers, and they found what you're saying not to be true. Stanford has said that their productivity decreased 10 to 20% across time for those working at home versus those that are working fully in person at the office. The IT company, which studied 10,000 skilled professionals, had a very similar result. They found that the hours worked actually increased 18%, that those working at home worked more than those who were at the office because they had a hard time divorcing the two, that when they were at home, they couldn't get away from it. And so they worked more, but that their productivity decreased anywhere from 8 to 19%. So they worked more, but produced less when they were at home. Is that surprising to you, Senator?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I agree with Joe when he says that your family has to be prioritized. And I get that. But if you think of it, you work 8 hours a day. That means you spend 2/3 of the day with your family. But while you're spending time in employment, I think the employer has a right, for honest days, works for an honest day's wage. Now, if those people are 20% less productive, I'm just curious as to whether or not they're willing to accept 20% less in pay, to be commiserate with the fact that they haven't lived up to the full 100% potential that was expected by the boss.
What would you say to that, Joel?
Well, I think one of the big issues that we're not talking about, which was alluded to earlier on in the conversation, a lot of companies, when they moved to remote work first, they were forced into it. It was a situation, obviously the pandemic, that forced a lot of companies into a remote work first situation. And so I actually don't think that companies have adequately prepared a lot of their employees to work remotely. So I work with a lot of companies that are in construction. Those companies were not built for a remote first work environment. I know a lot of startups that started post 2020 have not invested in real estate. They haven't made that investment, and they built strategically to allow for better productivity with workers. So I think just from a pure strategic business standpoint, a lot of companies, when the pandemic hit, they just simply shipped a laptop to their employees and said, make it work. That is not the right strategy. So I think companies ultimately are to blame as well with this.
You've got to help people succeed in a new environment, no doubt. We're going to add a young woman who says working remotely allows her to do whatever she wants during the workday, including taking naps and even secretly going on vacation while on the company clock. Not a great example for the work from home model. We'll meet her after the break. If you're a business owner, listen up now. You won't want to miss this. Are you sure you're not leaving money on the table when it comes time to exit? Well, thousands of business owners have already used FYSI's exit strategy and valuation services to sell smart and profit big. Why? FYSI will help you plan and position your business for the maximum return. This is what separates billion-dollar companies from small businesses. And FYSI can help you secure your legacy. Time matters. So don't wait until it's too late. Use promo Dr. Phil, DRPHIL, to schedule your free $5,000 risk assessment at fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000. That's promo code Dr. Phil to schedule your assessment for free. Visit fysi.com/Dr. Phil or call 800-877-4000 today. Have you heard about the so-called silent tax? It could be the biggest threat to your savings in 2025. I'm talking about inflation, out-of-control prices, a shrinking dollar, and less buying power for hardworking people like you. I trust Preserve Gold to safeguard my accounts, and I urge you to do the same. They're the only precious metals company I recommend. What are you going to do to protect what's yours? Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free Precious Metals Guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue through 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil, that's DRPHIL, to 50505 today.
I work a fake email job, and here's why I will never aspire for more. Work is now so fragmented and specialized that the work we do is low-key made up. Unless you're literally saving lives, no one's like, oh my god, I'm so good at increasing shareholder value. Number 2,
hard work no longer guarantees a better life.
A single salary used to cover an entire family, job security, better benefits. Now minimum wage is borderline unlivable, and I may never own a house in my lifetime. And number 3, companies are toxic, and working hard rarely even just gets you the promotion anymore. Why go above and beyond when it gets you nowhere?
Well, that was Jane, who says she has made it a career goal to hunt down the laziest and most mindless remote jobs possible. She says she would actually quit her job if she was asked to return to the office. Now, was that a TikTok video we were just watching, Jane?
Yes, it is.
Did you make that on company time?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
I may have.
Yeah, not surprised. You say mentally it's satisfying getting paid to do your laundry, but you say it doesn't feel like real life. So are you gaming the system? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess you could put it that way. I would say I'm kind of opting out of the system. I think to me, the whole system is kind of like a facade anyways. It was kind of just modern work culture is built up of so many what I call fake email jobs. I mean, of course, there's doctors and there's lawyers and there's people that are doing real impactful work. But the majority of so many corporate jobs nowadays are kind of just meaningless, insignificant, and unimpactful work that I just think that if we're kind of opting out of that, I don't think that that should be punished in any way.
So you think you should just get paid whether you're doing something of consequence or not?
I think that we've been kind of valuing hours as the measure of productivity for a really long time. And I think that it makes more sense to shift towards measuring based on value. So as long as I'm doing the work and I'm doing what I'm required to do, I don't think that we should just bill hourly just to bill hourly. I think it's already happening a lot with freelancing and contract work and the gig economy. I just think that if we're moving more towards a society based on value, companies will do better in setting up more specific goals and KPIs so that instead of just clocking in the hours that we're working, we're actually able to kind of be measured and paid based on the value that we're producing in our output.
Okay, well, let's see what kind of value you're producing on the clock. You gave us a list of your on-the-clock activities. You said while you're being paid, you're listening to podcasts, watching TV, hanging out with family, eating out, going to the gym, long showers, laundry, walks, grocery shopping, running errands, naps, visiting friends. You took a vacation out of the country, and they didn't even know you were gone. You go to the mall, amusement park, visit a Zen garden, and go to the arcade, all while you're being paid.
That's right.
Senator,
That's right.
I think this is your point.
I want to thank Jane for making my point. A man cannot serve two masters. You're either going to work or you're not going to work. And Jane chooses to recreate, which is absolutely fine. I get it. But the fact that somebody's paying Jane while she's recreating, thinking that they're getting an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, that's a little bit of a problem. By the way, there's probably a job waiting for you in the state of New Jersey, because it seems like you qualify very well for a state job.
Yeah. Now, Joe, on the other hand, you have a job recruiting, so that's kind of a quota-based job. I mean, in other words, you either recruit people or you don't. So it's like, I'm just making this up. If you have to recruit 38 people a month, like I say, I'm just making that up. It could be 10 or 100, but let's say you have to recruit 38 people a month to hit a certain standard. You either do it or you don't. So if you want to go to the amusement park, that's on you, right?
100%.
If you don't hit your numbers, to you, it'll make a difference whether you do it from an office or sitting in a tree. You have to hit your numbers or you're out of business.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with the sentiment that, companies are looking at what's the value you're bringing, what are the results that you're actually bringing to the table. If there aren't results, you shouldn't be getting paid. But I think this whole antiquated idea of going to an office for 8 to 10 hours a day, that equals work and results, that's the issue here. So I think if you're working remotely, you're getting the results, you're adding value to businesses, who cares where you're getting that work done? Where you get your work done should not be the ultimate decider of whether or not you're bringing value to a company. And I think more and more companies are realizing this, seeing this. And for some people, that's going to be great news. I think for people equally who go to an office for 8 to 10 hours a day and aren't producing anything, it probably is not good news either way.
Yeah. Now, Jane, you say you plan to retire at 30. From what?
So I like to say on my TikTok that my goal is to retire in my early 30s. So I've got a couple of other streams of income outside of my 9 to 5. I actually work 2 full-time jobs. So I work my 9 to 5 in marketing, and then I have a weekend and evening job as a call center rep. So I'm doubling my income there. I've got multiple side hustles. I'm investing my money. I've got money in the stock market and the real estate. So I've got a couple of plans in the works. And hopefully we'll see how that develops.
So your 2 jobs are, you work a call center. Do you have a set number of clients or whatever or sales you have to make?
There's no set amount there, but with a call center job, you're basically clocked in for the full 8 hours. So you can't not take calls when they come in. So how I would describe that kind of, I guess, essentially lazy job is there are some call centers where there's just lower volume kind of calls. So less come in, you're not taking as many calls, but you're still on call the whole time. You're still available to take the calls.
Okay. All right. Next, a young man who thought he had hit the jackpot when he finally landed a work from home job. We're going to find out why he says after only a few months, he was desperate to return to the office. He's going to tell us why when we come back. Well, we're adding Seth to our conversation here, and he went from working in an office his entire career to working remotely from his home. He says he thought a remote job would be a dream come true, but instead it became a nightmare that seriously affected his mental health. So, Seth, thank you for weighing in here. What went wrong?
I guess in my mind, I thought like it would be like what Jane does, like getting paid to do nothing, but it was completely different from that. It was like, I worked in customer service for a bank. It was like constant calls, back to back to back, nonstop, your whole 8-hour shift. So it wasn't like any downtime except for like when you went to lunch. That was about it.
Would that be what would happen if you were in the office?
I've never experienced like that much calls because I worked in call centers like in person where we took calls throughout the day, but it was never like your full 8-hour shift, call after call after call after call. I had never experienced that until I started working from home.
Were you isolated? Was that a problem?
Yeah, it was like for me, when you work from home, there is no work-life balance because your home is your work now.
Did you start to get depressed?
Definitely. I noticed I was not eating as much as because I'm really skinny, but I eat a lot. Like I noticed I wasn't eating a lot, and like when I would FaceTime like family members, they would all say the same thing about my face looking sunken in, and I thought it was because I was going through a breakup at the time. But looking back now, it was definitely because of working from home. Like it was to the point where I was literally dreaming about the job. Like I was dreaming about having customers. And I had never experienced that in the 10 years prior to being in our office from working from home.
Yeah, but at the office, there were other people to talk to, right?
And that was another thing. Yeah, you had other people to interact with. It was easy to get help. Like working from home, like even during training, like they let us know, okay, when you have like an irate customer, for example, you're going to have to get the call escalated. But we're warning you now, the people that you get the call escalated to, they're sometimes going to give you pushback on taking the call, which to me was like, how does that make sense that you hired somebody to do this job and you know they're not doing it, yet they still have a job?
Here's the thing, and let me tell you why what you're saying is not a surprise to me, because this has been going on since COVID started, right? So people started working at home, and so a lot of research has been done, and it was the shiny new thing, right? Everybody said, wow, this is great. I don't even have to get out of my pajamas. I can stay in my house shoes. I don't have to commute. I don't have to buy gas. I don't have to go get on the subway, or I don't have to do this commute. Look at all the time I'm saving. This is great. But then pretty soon that house started closing in on them.
Yep.
And they realized, man, I never realized this place was so small. And then I didn't realize I'm not that crazy about my partner over here. I didn't plan on being with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I need a break. And they didn't get a break. They didn't get out in the sunshine. They didn't get out and see other people. They didn't get up and take a shower and get dressed and get in the car and go somewhere. And it got very monotonous. And so we started surveying those people, and it was interesting. 32% said they struggle to maintain a work-life balance. 55% said they're working more hours remotely than physically at the office, because at the office they could leave. And it drew a boundary between the two. And they said, okay, that was work. This is home. I draw the line. I'm not working now that I'm gone. 51% said they experienced burnout because they couldn't get away from their job, because now their job was home. That used to be a dining room table. Now it's their desk. 40% said unplugging after hours was just virtually impossible. And 67% said they felt pressure to be available at all hours, all the time. They couldn't get away from the job. And the truth is, the collaboration dropped by at least 25%, because calling somebody versus walking down the hall or running into somebody in the break room, it just went away. You couldn't collaborate. You couldn't say, hey, wow, I just had a terrible person on the phone. How do you handle this? They said, oh, well, here's what I do. This is what I do. Or somebody says, I just had a great idea. And somebody said, well, hey, add this to it, add that to it. And 90% of CEOs said they tend to value and promote in-person people, because out of sight, out of mind. Fair or unfair, that was the truth. So let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about moonlighting, two-timing, and overemployed, all terms of how some remote employees are secretly working two full-time jobs. at the same time. And there is actually a website that teaches people how to do it without getting caught. You're going to love this one, Senator. We'll be right back. Work from home or return to the office? That is the question we're discussing tonight. And one reason some remote employees might not want to return to the office is because they're secretly working 2 full-time jobs at the same time, and their employers just don't know it. So they're kind of scamming, working the system. Now, in researching this topic, we uncovered a website that offers tips on how not to get caught. And you might know you can find anything on the internet. And so they actually coach people on how to interview for that second job. And they talk about, okay, look, what are some interview red flags to look out for? And they said anything that indicates micromanagement. Like, you don't want a company that requires having the camera on all day, for instance. And if you get into interviews, what do I say when an interview asks if I have another full-time job at the moment? You can say you do have another full-time job, just leave out the part where you're not planning on quitting, wink, wink. And then managing your identity. The question is, can I tell my partner about working multiple jobs? Their advice is, you don't tell anyone. Don't tell somebody you're dating. You don't want to run the risk of a bitter ex calling your bosses to out you. And relationships are ships, and ships go down, so don't trust anybody. Don't tell your family. Don't tell anyone. We've heard of jealous relatives calling companies to expose these working two-timers in the name of doing the honest thing. And what do I do with my LinkedIn once I'm two-timing? Well, if your new colleagues ask why you haven't added them, the best way of avoiding this is just to hibernate your profile. Say you're doing a social media cleanse, or that you're just not very active. And social media-wise, you need to make all your accounts private and tell colleagues you prefer to keep your personal and work life separate. What they're saying is you just got to start hiding, lie by omission, because if you tell anybody one single thing about having 2 jobs, it just isn't going to work. You're going to get caught, and that's a lot of pressure to live with. Senator, what do you bet you've got work-at-home people that have 2 jobs?
Well, I mean, they love the isolation, Dr. Phil. Hopefully, eventually, they'll get an isolation of a cell that's 8 by 10, and that way they can stop thinking about what they've done. Listen, since the beginning of time, the scam has always been on. And again, people want to work. Most people want to work as little and make as much money as possible. But then there's some other people that don't want to work at all and make as much money as possible. So, you run the gamut.
Yeah, no doubt. With 87% of the companies expected to mandate office returns this year, what will the millions of remote workers do? I mean, a lot of them say, hey, I'll quit before I'll come back. We'll discuss this when we come back. Major corporations and even President Trump himself mandating remote employees to return to the office. The question is, are we beginning to see the end of working from home? Seth, are you back in the office?
I am, yeah, full time.
Glad?
Ecstatic.
Ecstatic to be back?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, we're social animals. The truth of the matter is humans are social animals, and we have to interact. And if you are working from home, it's really important that you do get out of those 4 walls and you go interact with people, whether it's work-wise or otherwise. You've got to get out and interact. And maybe it's calling on clients, or maybe it's going and being with friends or whatever. But the research is very clear. If you do get isolated, your productivity goes down. You are more subject to depression from isolation. You are subject to loneliness, and clearly you become less cognitively active than if you interact with people a lot. And employers do have a clear case. Joel, it's not just a a power and control or trust thing. The results are clear. Most people work better as a member of a team than they do in isolation. It's not everybody, but by and large, most people work well when they're part of a team and they stimulate one another. And the country was built on working from the office. This goes all the way back to ancient Greece and forward. We've always been social animals, and companies are going to insist that people come back to work. And if you're somebody like yourself that is kind of a measurable outcome worker and you perform, if you were working for me and you had to recruit X number of people, I wouldn't give a damn if you were standing on your head, working out of a barn or your car. If you're producing, you're producing. But most people aren't in that situation. But for others that are working, and particularly if it's bureaucratic and they're part of a team, they're going to have to be there. I mean, do you understand that some jobs have to be team-wise?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the industry that I recruit in, construction, a lot of those roles are in person. But from a recruitment standpoint, we still had some of these construction companies, particularly with jobs that are heavily on the laptop. A lot of those companies have had problems recruiting and hiring people. And so one of the things I advise any of the clients I work with is to open it up to a fully remote work environment so you can recruit more people. You have more access to more people. Anyone who owns a business knows it's hard to recruit people. I also then, to your point, I tell them you've got to be intentional. If you're going to hire somebody remotely, you cannot just ship a laptop and then expect them to do their work. You need to be intentional. You need to coach them to be a good remote worker as well. I think this is where a lot of companies have gone wrong. They haven't been intentional. They haven't understood this social component, and they haven't provided opportunities for teams to get together. They haven't provided ways for people to connect. And that's crucial if you want to be successful with remote work.
You got to have measurable outcomes. Final thoughts after the break. I think we have had a really intelligent discussion about this tonight, and it seems like it's run the gamut. There are people who just aren't highly motivated, and working from home gives them the opportunity to maximize not being highly motivated. And if I was running a big company with a lot of office work, I'm going to want them there. There's no question about it. And I think, Senator, if I were you, I would want those people in the office where they could be supervised. And I think Joel makes a great point. If you're going to have remote workers, set them up for success. Don't just ship them a laptop and say good luck. I mean, you got to have a measurable outcome, and you got to have a great reporting system. But it's coming, and people are going to have to make a tough decision. I want to thank Joel, Jane, and Seth for sharing their stories tonight, and a big thank you to Senator Joe Pacio for joining us as well. And thanks to you at home for finding us here at Merit TV. We will have even more information about tonight's show on our website, so make sure to log on to merittv.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow night. So long, everybody.